Charlotte.
Hello, Alice.
Thanks for joining me.
No worries, anytime.
So you're my third artist and your art is baking.
Yeah, something a bit different from the other two, but I think to an extent it can still be classified as an art. So I'm privileged to, that you think of me as an artist.
Oh, of course. I mean, anytime I think of cooking or baking, like there's a level of love and emotion that goes into that, whether it's, negative emotions, positive emotions. It's very similar to like writing a song or like painting a picture. Something's going into what you're creating.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's probably, baking is one of the things that I show my love or appreciation for someone is definitely baking something for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What type of emotions do you reckon usually goes into your baking? Like, do you bake when you're stressed, or do you bake to calm down? Do you bake when you're happy? Do you bake when you're sad?
I mean, I kind of bake, anytime really. Like there are I technically bake different things depending how I'm feeling. So like in the past with uni, definitely when assignments due and I probably shouldn't be baking. We call it, like me and my friend call it procrastinating, because it's like whenever we're stressed or whatever before an assignment's due, like I quickly whip up like a batch of cookies or brownies, something that doesn't take a lot of time, and it's kind of just, they're very straightforward, so you can't really stuff up.
Yeah.
So it's like a safe bake. And then if for instance, I guess more for like birthdays, or if I'm feeling creative, whatever, I tend to go for more of the cakes, because with the icing and stuff you can kind of be a little more creative with that, and I guess the artistry comes out doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can bake something for every different kind of emotion. But yeah,
that's good.
That's handy.
And for this artist and Alice, you baked 3 things. You made bread, you made a cake, and you made cookies.
Yeah, a bit of a variety for sure. Yeah,
bit of a show reel of what you can do.
Yeah, oh no, exactly. Yeah, and I think, I do like dabbling in some bread for sure has been one that I've been passionate about for a while, especially with the sourdough. And I wanted to start that before the whole lockdown thing and everyone was getting into creating their own little starter and But yeah, no, that one's been really interesting, especially because I feel like it's a lot more scientific, and it requires like very precise measurements. With like cookies and stuff, you can kind of have a little leeway. Not saying you can go crazy, but yeah, they're a bit more forgiving. Well, with sourdough bread in particular, if you've got if the ratios aren't right, you could end up with like a pancake or something that's just like rock solid. Yeah. So that one's a bit more stressful, and you kind of always aim.
That was your best sourdough that I've tasted.
I think so. Yeah, probably up there. I've had a few good loaves recently as well. But yeah, as soon as I fall off the track of not measuring the ingredients precisely, and then maybe not feeding the starter with the right ratios, and then it's just like, you just go straight down. You're like, oh, because you know what you can do. So yeah.
And you also made Oreo cookies, right?
Oreo cookies, yeah. And they were really good. I guess because the Oreos kind of almost they're not like really, really sweet, like the cookie part of them. So that kind of counteracts like the chocolate and the sweetness from the cookie dough itself. So they were good, and they photographed so well. So I was like,
different textures.
Exactly. Yeah. It kind of, you need that visual appeal, I think, especially like with cooking. If it ain't looking good, then who's gonna eat it? So.
And is the chocolate cake something you like to do, or is there another flavored cake you prefer?
Personally, because I'm a chocoholic, Alice. You know that. So, chocolate is probably my go-to flavor. Recently, there's been a nice carrot cake recipe that I've been making, and it's just like, it's not dry. It's got like a really nice crumb, and with like a cream cheese icing is always a good one to go to as well. But yeah, I just think vanilla is very plain, and I don't get the hype with red velvet. So I'm like,
I like your white chocolate. Your white chocolate.
The white chocolate, yes. The white chocolate mud cake is like...
And I don't even like white chocolate. So.
No. But you would never think it was white chocolate either, because like I guess white chocolate doesn't have a really distinct flavor per se. It's like quite like more on the vanilla side. But if I'm making like white cake, I would go with that recipe because it's, you know, everyone likes it. The icing's really nice and it's always quite moist. So sorry if people get offended by the word moist, but anyway.
Now, in terms of, I guess, your art meeting, you know, what you're passionate about in your, you know, other aspects of your life, obviously animals, they're a massive part of your life.
Yeah, I've got some in the back.
and animal conservation. So can you tell me a bit about, there was a time that you did a baking thing for rhinos, correct?
That is right. Yeah. So depending on the school you go to, so our school, we have this thing called like MYP. So that was year 7 to 10. And then at the end of year 10, you had this thing called like a personal project. And you'd have to make something or design something that, I mean, you're passionate about or related to something, like some issue or whatever. And so like I was finding it hard to figure out what I could do. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not really creative in other aspects, but I do love my baking, and what a better way to raise awareness and money for conservation issues such as the decline in rhino populations than doing like a bake sale. So I basically made, can't remember how many cookies I made. There were a few batches, like 6 or 7 batches of just chocolate chip cookies, because you can't really go wrong there. Everyone likes a good chocolate chip cookie. And then we're selling them at my kind of home soccer field when they had all like the little kids playing. And then like I try to bring people in and sell some cookies. I think I raised, with some help, I think $400 for, so for a foundation. And they kind of work with not only like the poaching aspect, but also education. Because like a massive thing with wildlife conservation, I think it has changed now in the right direction. Because before, and especially when I first started with wildlife conservation, I was like, oh my God, how can these people be poaching these animals, and like, why, like this isn't okay. But that's come from a very privileged position, and these people are often facing like terrible circumstances, and it can start small from just poaching like antelope and stuff like that, and then they have these big poaching kings. They'll kind of recruit people to hunt down those kind of bigger animals like the elephants and the rhinos, and then that's when it all gets very, very messy. So providing they kind of aim to like educate and get people into like a better position where they can get better job opportunities, where they can support their family instead of going down that poaching route, which I think is very, very important. So
and it's interesting how you kind of noted that initial angry reaction is coming from like a privileged point of view. At what point did you realize you needed to take a more nuanced look at how you were reacting?
I think it came with age and kind of growing up a little bit. But because I got to go to, like, I was fortunate enough to work at like a rehab facility in South Africa when I finished school. And I think having those kind of people that are working to stop the poaching crisis over there, and kind of getting their experiences and their opinions kind of helped educate. It helped me to educate myself on, like, it's a lot more, it's not black and white, it's very, very grey. And they're still struggling with it as well. But I think it just put into perspective, even speaking with the local people, like how they feel about the poaching crisis and stuff like that. I think it just makes you realize that it's like, well, you're so not a part of like the issue. You need to like back off a little bit and realize that you can't just randomly attack people that are obviously like, they don't have the same opportunities that you do. So you just, I kind of need to back off a little bit and just be like, okay, let's work at getting them out and providing better opportunities for them so that they don't have to go down that route at all.
Yeah. For a layman, can you kind of like make it clear why is poaching bad? What is the negative effect on the environment, the wildlife that poaching has?
No worries. So it's actually, I mean, the last few years, I guess it's gotten worse too, because when they first started with the whole rhino poaching, they just say target the rhinos, hack off their horns, and then just leave the carcass like that. But then they caught on that the rangers that were patrolling the area actually use vultures, because vultures are scavengers, right? So they'll go to carcasses to feed. So they were following the vultures, and the poachers realized that because the rangers were following the vultures to the carcass, it made the rangers make it easier for the rangers to hunt the poachers. So they then started poisoning the carcasses, which then had a flow-on effect, because then the vultures were eating the carcasses, but then they were getting poisoned. Oh. So then it was just like, you have this flow-on effect, which isn't like, it's terrible, because vultures are basically, they're like the garbage men. They help keep everything in check. So they help with limiting diseases in that kind of ecosystem. So as soon as you cut them out, then you're going to have a greater prevalence of disease outbreaks into that wildlife community, which nobody wants, because then you just got like that whole ecosystem kind of collapses. And then as well, they just see a rhino and they'll poach it. And more often than not, they usually are, females are hunted because they normally are in groups, which makes them easier to poach, because why not just hunt one when you can hunt three or whatever? And they might be pregnant, so then they just kill off a whole another generation, which isn't good. And then you also have the flow-on effects where it could be a mother with a calf, and then they won't kill the calf, but they kill the mother, and then the rhino is then orphaned and they can't really survive. And then hence why they've, in South Africa and kind of Southern Africa, they've got a whole load of rhino orphanages where they just collect, or they try and collect all these kind of rhinos that have been orphaned from poaching. I mean, mothers die of natural causes, but they'll take all those orphans in and try and raise them up and release them back into the wild. But for the beginning of their time at the orphanage, they're so traumatized by what they've had to experience. And I can't imagine what they've had to go through. So I guess, there's a lot of different reasons why poaching's bad. You just have like the local community, like that's not a good kind of source of income to get into. Like you might make some money quickly and a lot of it, but like, what are you doing with your life? Really? You know, there's so much, you could be doing so much more if you've been given the opportunities, obviously, and that's why it's important.
Yeah, and that's where that nuance comes in, and that's a great area. We wish we could live in a perfect world sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But it never works like that.
Yeah. And so I kind of, listening to that, it really solidifies the fact that when you disrupt something in the ecosystem, the environment, that removing that little, Jenga piece, everything will just topple, because everything's interconnected,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, in another one, like if we just go away from rhinos altogether, you look at the shark culling issue that's been going on. Like as soon as those shark populations have been decreased, and they've seen that in kind of more the Pacific Islands, or like further up where the fishermen are just going for sharks because they can make so much money off of those shark fins. But then the whole ecosystem, all the fishes and stuff, the fish populations have completely just dropped because there's no control over like those bigger fish, which would normally be eaten by the sharks. And then it's so unbalanced that it's not sustainable. So it's and then again, it's always about providing better job opportunities. And I know there's shout out to, I think her name's Maddie. She runs Project Hübschle in Indonesia, where she hires normal shark fishermen over there, and instead of them going out fishing for sharks, turning it into a tourism opportunity. So they'll take tourists around the local islands and make money that way. And the fishermen are so much more happy. and they get more money, which allows their kids to go to school, get a better education. So then it's kind of that whole flow and effect where their children can then get better job opportunities and so forth. So,
and you're not disrupting the ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. In terms of where this all started from, when did you know I am in love with animals? Like when, because obviously, like, you know, I can sit here and say, you know, I'll pat a dog, but like you love animals. Where did that start?
It's kind of hard to remember. I think like ever since I was a kid, you know, I mean, I'd always be like fascinated. I remember at preschool, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a lot of greenery underneath that balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I used to always search for snails under there. So it started off like that. I mean, like there'll be little weird things. Like I saw a stray kitten and I was giving it milk. Now, like I know, don't give a cat milk because they're basically lactose intolerant. So don't do that. Lesson learned. Yeah. But like I've always enjoyed dogs. I think David Attenborough has always been like a massive kind of influence because I always grew up watching like documentaries on the good old VCR.
God, a VCR. Yeah. Wow.
I know, it shows my age. But yeah, no, I don't know. I think you can't go wrong just looking outside and looking. There's so much more to the world than just us. And you know, you got to appreciate that. And I think, I don't know, just wildlife is so cool. Like it's so different. Like even looking,
and people are such a pain in the ass.
Honestly, just so ridiculous. Like, if just humans could, you know, go off to the side, not interested, and just I'd rather focus on animals.
And can you tell me about what you studied at university and your honours a little bit?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, well, I mean, originally I wanted to do vet, but I obviously didn't get the ATAR for that. And thank God I didn't, because I don't have the emotional resilience. And shout out to them for doing all the work that they do, because that's tough. Yeah. But it was kind of like a budding degree with vet science at Sydney Uni. So it was animal veterinary bioscience. So it's a 4-year course. And then the 4th year, you could do like an honours project. Initially, I was going to be going up to the Northern Territory to look at how the impact of nest volume on flatback turtle hatching success, but because of COVID, that kind of got shunted. So my supervisor, he specialises in these organisms called CH40. That's their scientific name. But they're basically what I say, underwater wood lice. That's because they're from the same family. It's isopods. And so basically I was looking at their behavior and their olfactory ability, and looking at how if I removed their main olfactory organ, which sounds very brutal, and it kind of was, seeing whether they still behave in the same manner. So I focused on 3 different behaviors. So it was social congregation. One of them was finding food, and the other was like an anti-predator response. So just seeing, how they all react. Didn't really have an impact on them at all, which was great. So I guess they were able to, you know, adapt and stuff like that. And
that must have been a fun conclusion.
No, yeah. They didn't look. Well, the funniest thing was as well, because you have to put them on ice as like a form of anesthetic. Yeah. And I found, I still got this like my hypothesis was wrong for this as well, because I did another test just looking at the impact of ice, and they were quicker to go into congregations after they had been on ice rather than if they were normal. So I was like, okay, so maybe, I mean, obviously ice has an impact, not the result I was thinking, because I'm like, okay, they're probably slower, you know, like they should probably slow it at congregate, but it seemed like the opposite. And then the same with the anti-predator, they had no anti-predator response whatsoever. And I was like, even when you had given them a chance to recognize, so I use crabs as my predators, recognize the crab as a predator, they were still like, nah, I'm cool. What is this thing? And then they just get eaten, and then they watch their friend getting eaten, and I was like, what are you doing?
Oh God.
Like, wow, you were
I see for death.
Yeah. I mean, I've got some great footage. Like, it's funny, and I have a greater appreciation for crabs. I think they're smart. People.
Well, they sound a hell of a lot smarter than icepods.
I know, icepods are not smart. They just literally, the whole thing is to eat and reproduce. So, I mean, that's all. Yeah, I mean, that's the main function of life.
I'm sorry you couldn't do turtles, but it still sounds like an interesting research project.
Oh, no, for sure. And I think it was probably better off that I did that project anyway, because I think logistically that turtle one would have been a bit of a nightmare.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, okay, I'm not complaining. So,
now, going back to rhinos.
Okay.
Obviously, they're quite important to you.
Yeah.
You, for Artist Alison Awareness, you want to do your kind of charity awareness for rhinos. Can you tell me a bit about the charities that you selected?
Sure. Yeah. So, because I had picked a few different ones, so I wanted like a few various ones. One was, I think, two are more focused on like the education side. So they kind of allow children in those kind of local communities where those rhino populations are, and allow them to stay in school so that they can have better job opportunities, so that they don't have to go down that poaching road. And then I think I have two that are more related. They're rhino orphanages. So obviously they have a lot of costs looking after these babies, because they drink liters and liters of milk per day. So just providing them with enough money so that they can keep rehabilitating them, and then hopefully re-releasing them into the wild, so then bolstering the rhino population over there as well. But yeah, so those are the different ones to kind of get sorted, because I think you need a mixture of both, right? You need to help the people, because it's obviously not their fault, and then you need to ensure that you can protect that population and kind of help them increase the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely kind of this balancing act of, helping both ends of the problem.
Exactly.
Well, I'm very excited to like show everyone the design we have for the shirt and to sell the shirts. It's all very exciting, and the design we've come up with is really cool. And yeah, Acid Lake is very excited as well. So it's been a lot of fun.
The design has been, you guys killed it with the design. So I'm very, very happy. I just I just want the shirt now.
Want to buy it now?
Yeah.
And would you say that you've enjoyed your Artist Alice Awareness experience? Did you like this kind of thing?
Oh yeah, for sure. And especially like even doing the research just behind with like the wildlife poaching and stuff. There like great article on why people poach, and there were some reasons that I was like, I never expected to like think of like a reason to poach would be, say, to go against as form of rebellion against the laws that they've created in some countries. And I'm like, okay, I never anticipated that, but okay, it's something different. So yeah, no, I get to learn something. I get to try and educate others. So you can't lose.
Yeah,
and I get to bake.
Yeah, and you get to bake, and I get to eat it. So
you do.
Yes, I know all the other art everyone else can consume. This art, I was the only one that consumed it. So
yeah, sorry.
But yes, we will be linking all the resources that Charlotte talked about and all the charities that we discussed today. So yeah, it was a lovely conversation. Can't wait for those t-shirts. And yeah, see ya.
See ya.